Okay, welcome everybody to the May 8th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. I want to start by pointing out the exits. There are two in the rear of the room and then two right behind the dais. Let's all stand for the pledge. One of the best parts of this time of year is that we have so much to celebrate, and tonight is no different. We'll start our meeting tonight with presentations. Board of Ed would like to recognize our Cornwall Central High School valedictorian, Karina Liba, and salutatorian, Morgan Gagnon. And for that, I will pass it off to Terry.
So we had a chance to celebrate these two phenomenal young ladies about a month or so ago, but there's been some added twists and accolades added to their already amazing resumes. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Piazza to start the celebration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dade. So I'm very happy to introduce the valedictorian and salutatorian for the Cornwall Central High School class of 2023, Karina Liba and Morgan Gagnon. Both Karina and Morgan represent the absolute best of Cornwall Central High School. They are members of the National Honor Society, varsity athletes, and talented musicians. Both girls take on a number of leadership roles at CCHS and are committed to service in the Cornwall community. The Cornwall Central High School class of 2023 salutatorian is Morgan Gagnon. Morgan is a member of the cross-country, winter, and spring track and field teams at CCHS. Morgan was a member of the section-winning cross-country team this past fall. Morgan is currently enrolled in 5 AP advanced placement classes, as well as being part of the concert and jazz bands. Morgan will attend Princeton University in the fall, where she plans to study engineering. Congratulations, Morgan. Karina Liba is the Cornwall Central High School class of 2023 valedictorian. Karina was a member of our varsity volleyball team who made a run to the state Final Four this fall. Karina is currently enrolled in 5 AP courses and is a member of the concert band. Karina is planning to attend Brown University to study computer science in the fall. Congratulations, Karina. And one more thing I would just like to share. Over 1.85 million 11th graders in the United States took the PSAT NMSQT test in October 2021 and were entered into the National Merit Scholarship Program competition. Of those 1.85 million students, 15,000 earned the designation of National Merit Scholarship Program semifinalists. Of those 15,000, 7,140 students were named National Merit Scholarship Program winners for 2023, and of those 7,140 National Merit Scholarship Program winners, 2 of them stand before you tonight, Morgan and Karina. So congratulations on all you've accomplished and added to Cornwall High School during your time here. We look forward to hearing about all of your future successes. Thank you. Congrats.
Stay for a picture with the board. For a picture. Slide in to the upright projector.
Do the turn.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Congratulations.
Okay, we'll continue tonight with our first recognition of visitors. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment at tonight's meeting, now and at the end. First session will be capped at 30 minutes total. Anyone who does not get to speak now will be able to do so later. Comments including obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, or statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. Anyone wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should present those comments or concerns to the superintendent during regular business hours. And finally, please remember there is no cross-dialogue between speakers and members of the board. Anyone wishing to speak is invited to step forward to the microphone, identify yourself, and limit comments to 3 minutes. And if you would like a direct response, you can leave your contact information on the sign-in sheet right next to Linda. Thank you.
Barbara Gaza. I was at the forum last week, and I heard candidates speak about engaging the community and how important communication is. And I had to ask myself, are they talking about Cornwall? Because we obviously don't have that here. And we don't have it because of policy that we are almost scolded to understand, is that there will be no cross-dialogue. So, I would only hope that if we have candidates who win next week, that they will take that seriously. And, there are 9 of you sitting here, and we have administration here, and we ask a question, and nobody is willing to answer us. It's rather absurd. There's people here who have the answers for what we ask. You must. If you worked in corporate America and you didn't have the answers, you wouldn't be in corporate America. So it's really astounding how this all evolves. Because I have come before you and I've asked questions, and I find that your answers are selective. I asked about the college courses. How many do we have? How many do we have? How many teachers? How many students? This is not a mandated expense, so we should know when we do something that is above and beyond the expectation of the community. But nobody has answered that question for me. And you sent me the $5 million rescue aid information, and it came to me with 6 lines of information, acronyms, so I wasn't able to identify what these areas really were. However, it was broken down into salaries and benefits. Of the 6 lines, 2 of the lines, the benefits were more than the salaries. Did anybody look at that? Maybe I should have made an appointment with Mr. Sotland to ask that question, but it seems like that was questionable at best. And I have to question about the budget, because I know that year after year after year, budgets have been approved in this school district without having prior actual numbers for expenses. And I don't know how you do that in good conscience when you're asking the taxpayers to approve a budget and you don't have actual expenses as part of that material. Line by line. I mean, I've worked on budgets, many. You always know prior expenses. But that has not been the case here. And I just, I don't get it. And I would also like to comment that the last time I spoke, my comments about the extracurricular activities in the district and how I felt that we shortchange the elementary schools on extracurricular activities. Those comments were not on the video. I don't know if that was a technical glitch. I don't know. But I think it's an important consideration that as these children move up into that, to the middle school, we should be able to offer them the same thing that we're offering at the middle school as far as extracurricular. And of course, the high school, I mean, there's many, many extracurricular activities later on in their education. But it should be across the board. We shouldn't, children in our elementary school should not be paying for extracurricular activities that the rest of the school district doesn't pay for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goslip.
Hi, I'm Dawn Kilgore. I know this is going to sound funny because you all know I'm a teacher and I've spoken here a million times, but I really hate public speaking. I'm here for two reasons that are kind of together. I know a few meetings ago, or I've been told a few meetings ago, there was a discussion about a bus from the high school after school activities to the middle school for sports and how it couldn't work because of the timing and a whole bunch of things. Just recently, there was an NHS meeting at the high school. It's mandatory once a month. And my daughter had sent an email to the coach. I have the NHS meeting. I'm going to be a little bit late. I was already leaving work at O'Neill. We can leave at 2:25 to get there, to get her out. The meeting could go to 2:50. Practice starts at 3. And the response was, well, can you get a ride with one of the other girls to get there on time? So anybody who goes through Five Corners or from the school knows that 2:50 getting out of a club to get to the middle school by 3 o'clock for practice isn't actually possible. So if we aren't going to have a bus, maybe talk to our coaches at the middle school about a reasonable expectation on times that they can arrive. I had her there by 3:05, 3:10. She also had to miss 3 orchestra rehearsals. They were mandatory, but they were all on Mondays, and those are my faculty meeting days, so I could not leave work to get her there. So that's just something to think about moving forward. I know somewhere down the line, stuff is going to get done, and hopefully the sports will be back at the high school. I know that's all in the process. But in the meantime, it's just something to think about. On that note, those of you who have been on the board know that I was one of the members of the community who came and fought to bring the lacrosse program to Cornwall. My husband and I ran the Cornwall Youth Lacrosse Program. We fought, we begged, we pleaded, we brought facts. The girls program is suffering, and not monetarily. It's suffering with the amount of girls playing. There is a definite culture and climate issue on the team. And especially after listening to the forum last week and hearing everybody talk about how to address the culture and climate, it's not just the teammates. It also has to do with the coaching. I was not allowed to say anything before I heartbreakingly pulled my daughter from the team last week because I was done. Because she was afraid if I mentioned her name before I did, she would be a target more than she already was. There are girls on the team right now that also feel the same way, and their parents will not come forward because their child will be targeted. I know we have a new athletic director. I have been talking to him. On my first conversation, he said he wasn't aware of anything. I'm going to have another conversation. He asked me to send emails to try to contact people. I did not get responses to my emails from the coach. I sent 2 emails. I tried to talk in person and was turned away from. So as a board, I know this isn't something that you are completely on top of. I am talking to the athletic director, but I did want to make you aware because if you see numbers going down on the lacrosse team, I don't want you to pull the funding because it's not a love for lacrosse that's lacking. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Kilgore.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Wright. I'm the president of the Cornwall Central Teachers Association. First and foremost, I'd like to state I am following the framework agreed upon through mediation. I've reached out to Mr. Dade and was told to contact Zig, on who is not Zig, who is not in the office today and maybe tomorrow. To ensure that all board members have clarity, please listen to our questions concerning personnel actions, letter F, where there is an elimination of 14 CCTA positions due to the end of federal funding. I was told by Mr. Dayton in email that this was a mandatory personnel action. Why is this mandatory? From the presentation given July 12, 2021, 9 FTA AIS teachers currently employed in district were paid approximately $1.3 million in federal funds. These positions were not eliminated at the end of the year. So, we do not understand why the board must take action tonight. Was the application for federal funds even amended to include these 14 teaching positions? Or does the application still stand for only 6 AIS positions and 30 TA positions, as stated in the 2021 July presentation? When a probationary position is created, does it matter where the funding comes from? And if the funding is switched, let's say to special ed, or from special ed to the general fund, does the position need to be eliminated and then created? So I'm asking you, can you wait to approve these elimination of positions until these crucial questions are answered? We recommend any clarity, information that you can provide to me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. So just to offer some clarity, number one, about our comment response policy, what Ms. Gazda referenced. There is no cross-dialogue, cross-talk between speakers and the board, but we have updated our policy this year that we provide answers at the following meeting, which we've done several times for questions that you have asked, and you referenced several of those answers in your comment. So I don't want to leave the false impression that we do not respond to public comment. The rationale behind waiting is so that we can gather all the facts and give an answer that we're very confident in. To some of your questions that you asked tonight, I would point out that the policy of extracurriculars at the elementary school is the same for those clubs that you mentioned, is actually the same at the middle school and high school as well, which you might also have an issue with, I'm not sure, but just wanted to clarify that point. Now, in reference to some of the comments we got last time, most of those, really all the speakers last time were just advocating for positions in the budget prior to our final budget vote. So I think the board discussion that we had last week addressed those issues better and more comprehensively than I can right now. So to avoid being redundant, I just want to once again thank everybody for being so involved in this year's budget process. It has involved more variables than most other years, a point which we have referenced a few times. But just in general, hearing from the community is always important. We appreciate all those who stepped forward during the past few months, and I think we arrived at a budget that we can all be proud of and happy with. Okay, that is the public comment response period for this meeting. Again, we will respond to comments made at this meeting, at our following meeting, per our updated policy. That brings us to committee reports. I'll start with facilities. Larry?
Yeah, we had a meeting on April 11th, and I apologize. As I was getting ready for tonight's meeting, I realized I never sent out the minutes for the April 11th meeting. They will go out tomorrow. We had discussed a presentation to the board on May 22nd that the culmination of what we have been doing over the past number of months. So I just wanted to, that's what we will be doing.
Very good. Thank you, Larry. So visitation, Margaret is out tonight. I don't know if there's somebody who wants to step in to provide an update. No? Okay. Audit, Jim.
No new updates. We will have internal audit beginning soon, and we'll have a meeting to discuss the results of that audit in due course.
Thank you, Jim. Policy, Teresa.
We have a meeting set up. Look, I got in the habit of turning that on. Took 3 years. Who knows if I'll need it. We are having a meeting on May 17th, and it will be our final meeting of the year. Brendan, a quick question. I was online under budget information, and I saw line by line, all the line by line items. There's a complete breakdown, isn't there? Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the conversation, and I know it was just brought up, but the whole budget is line by line on our website. So anybody that's listening out there.
So that, just to keep it on committee reports, I'll fold that into my update for communication. So this Thursday, thanks for that unintentional tee up. So this Thursday, May 11th, we will be having a community budget forum starting at 6 p.m. in this room. And if you're familiar with the capital project forums that we had last year, it will follow that same format. It'll open with an informative presentation. We will then open the floor for comments, questions from the community, which we will do our best to respond live to, so everybody gets as much information and chance to really dive deeper into some of the numbers as possible. And part of that, I'm sure we will be leaning into some of the numbers that are available currently on our website, but all of that will be posted after the forum on our Facebook page, website, and everything. So even those who do not attend will be able to catch up with that. And also, just a general reminder for those looking for any information about this year's budget, you can follow our BOE Facebook page. We're also putting up materials on our website under budget information, courtesy of our unofficial communications director, Megan Argenio. And we'll keep posting stuff in both places between now and next Tuesday, and which segues into our mandatory plug for the vote next Tuesday, May 16th, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Do you have a follow-up to that, Richard?
So you asked if there was a visitation report. I guess I'll just give a little summary of what's been going on. So over the past, I would say, month or so, we've been having discussions about a final report being finalized from our fall visit. I don't know where we are with that. I know there's a couple different documents being proposed. We're supposed to have spring visits, I believe, too, as a committee. I haven't heard any updates on that regard, but I'm hoping that we can get there sometime, hopefully this month. So that's just what I know as of right now.
Got it. Thank you, Richard. Okay, that brings us to scholarship. Lewis.
So I was given an update from Mr. DeBold about our scholarship, the Board of Education scholarship, and it has been awarded to Shelby Hunt. I have requested by Joe to, if you wouldn't mind sharing the video that the student puts in for it. I think it's good for us to see it, know who's getting it, and a reminder that she's going to need a check. As it's the Board of Education Scholarship Fund, we all have to start with us. So just a shameless poke to see Harvey at your earliest convenience, please. Thank you.
When does this go into collection?
As parents, we should
I'll have
use
to
this.
go with council.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. And congratulations to Shelby, by the way. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. The consent agenda allows the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover relatively routine matters. Is there any member of the board who would like to pull a particular item off the consent agenda? Pass.
Number 2 and number 10.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following consent agenda as submitted by the Superintendent of Schools. That's items 3 through 9 and 11. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry. So, motion?
You got it.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, John. That brings us to item 2. Sorry, I got logged out for a sec. Yeah. Just want to get the language right. So resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education does hereby accept the following personnel actions. That's items A through H. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Discussion? Pass.
Okay, item 2, I'd like us to have a little bit more kind of elaboration on attachment F, the elimination of positions as listed under personnel action. So, I mean, I'm looking at the new budget for school year 23-24, and I see that the budget did address the fact that the federal government ended funding for most, if not all, of those positions. Now, the process is to eliminate, under the reason being end of federal funding, then we have a project, we have proposed budget due for kind of, a public vote very soon that addresses that. So can we have kind of, see kind of tie up here, what are we eliminating? What are we proposing to fund? Just for the sake of the public listening to us tonight.
So I received the inquiry from Ms. Wright over the weekend, on Sunday actually, at 7:34 p.m. Wrote back to her bright and early this morning at 7:36 a.m. Just basically explaining that all of these positions were created with federal funds. So our team has zero argument, whatever the board wants to do. One way or another, there's no funding for the positions listed. So things like all the teaching assistants that are listed there, intervention work at the high school, things of that nature, all of them are ending one way or another, so this is really a bookkeeping piece. So we slated every single position that was covered with federal funds. There's an end date of 6/30/2023. That's when the funding's done. What would happen is once the budget is approved, hopefully by the community next Tuesday, we would create positions that were adopted by the Board of Education for next year. It makes it very clean. It makes it very clear to everyone. So we're not saying, what about position number 7 at the elementary school? What about counselor number 3 at the high school? Eliminate all the positions, and then we create positions that weren't filled by resignations, retirements, vacancies. It's not a clean 14 to 14 supported by next year's budget. I'll give an example. Look at all the elementary teacher federally funded positions listed there. We are not adopting 8 new elementary positions in next year's budget. We had 4 at the elementary school for intervention and additional support, plus 1 for class size. That's 5 out of 8. Again, why do A through E are saved? The next ones are not. It's just clean. Same thing with the counselors. 1 counselor is moving into a vacancy. We're adding a counselor at the elementary school. So we really could care less when we do this. It's ending 6:30, no matter what. This was clean for us because we abolished the positions by board approval this meeting. Next meeting, we get the joy of adding all the positions that were created in our new robust budget that's supporting our students. And those positions would be delineated outside of those that were being filled with vacancies, resignations, retirements, et cetera. The question that I asked Ms. Wright to wait until Zig got back was simply by way of what is the process for our existing federally funded teachers Miraculously, and much to the testament of this Board of Education and our team, everyone has a spot next year. But there has to be a process by which we figure out you were a fourth grade teacher at Willow, but you're going to be X position in the district by way of retirements and things of that nature. All of that is just something that I asked for her to wait until Zig got back because he's working on that process with our principal. So I answered all the questions. I just couldn't answer that last one that I wanted Zig to be back in the office.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Can I just, one clarifying follow-up on that? I thank you for that answer, Terry. I understand what you're saying. It's, we voted for a lot of these folks to get started on the tenure track when they were on the federal funds, with the explanation that we may be able to keep some or all of them. This, ending these positions, when they're placed at the next meeting, they'll still be on that tenure track, and that won't be affected at all?
That's absolutely correct.
Great, thank you.
Terry, thank you for the, I guess, the wax on, wax off, kind of how this is all working. It, you know, I'm trying to recall what those positions were back in 2021. And I'm sorry, it's kind of deep in the recesses of my memory, but as I recall, some of those positions were already existing within the district. And what that presentation showed was that those positions that were existing were going to be covered now by the federal funds. So my question has to do with, you know, pre-COVID, post-COVID, you know, what do we look like, right? If there's an authorized level of teachers, staff that we had pre-COVID, now that we're getting out of COVID, as it pertained to those positions that were earmarked in that 2021 document, if it was an existing position, are we eliminating it or are we retaining it?
So the simple answer is if you look in the position division section, that's how they were presented in some iteration from 2021 to about a year ago. As you recall, about a year ago, we made some tweaks to our allocation because we weren't able to hire teaching assistants. Thus, we were bringing on more teaching support at the elementary, middle, and high school areas. The question that you're raising started at the very beginning of the process where we utilized our existing AIS teachers to, what's the word, Harvey, I'm drawing a blank, supplant. The board voted unanimously to utilize that funding based on community input as well to really kickstart our capital project funding. So we were able to supplant. That was completely permissible, but that was way back 2 years ago. Those positions are still in the district. We were able to supplant. Supplant means they're currently in the district, but we are supplanting that funding for another purpose. So all of those AIS teachers will continue to be in the district.
So if they were existing pre-COVID,
AIS, yes.
they are now existing post-COVID.
AIS, yes.
So if they were in that document, they are not, even though they were being funded over that supplanted period, we did not eliminate
That's correct.
any position.
Not a single AIS position.
I know we've
was
added a
eliminated.
lot. It's kind of hard to, we don't have a program, so it's hard to keep track of all the players and what the FTEs are.
Yep,
Yet,
AIS
real-
remained 100%.
it, pre, post, nothing changed.
100%.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you for that explanation. And just to pin one other note that you did mention, Terry, but these aren't eliminated right now. This is, the effective date is end of June, end of the school year, which is when the money runs out anyway. But just to make that point entirely clear.
That's right.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. That brings us to item 10, which is the District Office Roof Agreement Resolution. Resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, The Board of Education does hereby approve the agreement between the district and Frank Stevens and Sons Roofing Incorporated for the district administration building roofing capital project work. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Discussion? Bass.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. My question, basically just kind of to confirm what I have in mind here, I mean, what I learned earlier, is that the new shingle would not be slate, but architectural that looks like slate. I mean, can you talk a little bit about the quality of the shingle and why not slate? And
Sure.
yeah.
Well, first of all, to put back the slate would put the project out of reach. The cost alone is more than twice what the shingles cost. The shingles themselves, having gone to shingles with that understanding, we also have to abide by the state regulatory authority, SHPO, which is the Historical and Preservation Organization that looks at every project. This is the kind of project that they like to look at because it affects the architectural look of it's not a historical building, believe it or not, but it's still historical to the town and the village. So we looked at the shingles that would give us the maximum life. These are guaranteed for at least 50 years, and it matched what we have as close as possible with giving that same slate look.
Thanks, Harvey. The slate look, I mean, would like passerby would look, oh, look at the slate roof, I mean, would say, or they can't tell the difference, I mean.
You have to get up really,
Yeah.
really close.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
Like the size
The
and,
color,
The shape.
the shape, the whole texture of it
Yeah.
really mimics, and it's.
even the size.
Yeah, it obviously, if you get right on top of it, or if you look at it and say, wow, that's a little too perfect for shingles, that's about the worst you're gonna see, because it's a very, I've worked with them before, and they're really top quality.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to our annual budget hearing. This is an informative presentation about all the budget facts that we are all familiar with at this point, so I'll hand it off to Harvey.
Good evening. So tonight we do have the annual budget hearing. Keep in mind that this is more or less of a regulatory requirement once the board adopts the budget. What we're going to be looking at tonight is kind of an overview of everything that's transpired that leads us up to what the board approved last meeting. So right off the bat, the budget itself, which is the expenditure plan, that which we're going to be spending, is approximately $87.2 million. This is an increase, a budget-to-budget increase of just a little bit short of $6 million. The increase itself is 7.11%. With that said, how we're paying for some of this is the tax levy. The projected tax levy is only projected to go up 1.2%. And part of the funding will be coming from fund balance, and we'll be using $2.5 million of that. So let's look at the breakdown of these expenditures. The state requires us to break things down in administrative, program, and capital. If you look down below the chart, you'll see pretty much what makes that up. But for purposes of tonight, what I want to focus on is if you look at the first column, that's our proposed budget of 23-24 versus our current year, 22-23. So let's just kind of look at each one of these increases or decreases just to get a sense of what's driving them. Administratively, we're up almost $500,000. It's important to keep in mind that what's in that number is the BOCES bond interest expense for the first year. So that's almost $350,000 alone that's in that number, okay? Put that aside, the increase is negligible just based on normal things like contractual salaries. I want to jump down to capital. Capital is actually reduced. Why is it reduced? There's two big items that play into this. The first one is the transfer to capital. If you look at a transfer to capital this year versus what we're proposing for next year, it's down by about $500,000. Okay? Additionally, the interest expense on our debt service is down by about $125,000. So if you took those into account, you would see what would typically be a normal increase in the capital for normal contractual increases and so forth. And that leaves us to the program of 5.3. That number, we're not going to break it out per se, but that is really speaking toward everything that we've added to the program, the positions we've added, the normal contractual salary increases, and so forth. In terms of percentages of the total budget, I just like to look at this every year and present it because it's always nice to kind of show a trend if we have one. And we are looking at one this year. It doesn't look monumental, but it is. The program, the percentage of the budget going to program is going from 76 to 77, and capital is coming down. Is it negligible? Not necessarily. To me, every time we can put $1 more into program rather than capital or admin, it's a win. As far as expenditures, as I mentioned at the beginning of the budget process, we talk about the rollover budget. Putting that aside, the big question is now, what did we add to the budget in addition to the rollover? And this lists everything that we've added to that rollover budget. If you look at all the positions, the FTEs, there's 11 FTEs that we're adding. We're also adding 20 additional seats to the UPK program, Universal Pre-K program. And we're also adding 1 assistant track and field coach, totaling almost $1.5 million. How are we paying for this? Let's talk about revenue. So obviously, if the expenditures go up 7.11%, so does the funding. So if we look at the breakout, the 4 different categories, the first one is state aid. State aid is going from 25.9 to 31.9. It's a nice increase. It's a beautiful increase. I wish we got it every year. I will tell you that with respect to the state budget that was passed just recently, the state aid that we got was reduced by about $18,000. Okay, really negligible, but it did come down a little bit. Next, we have the miscellaneous other. This is kind of an all-encompassing. The biggest piece of this nowadays, based on the interest rate environment, is interest income. Okay, and that's largely why you're seeing that increase of 726. Fund balance. Fund balance is 2.5 million versus what we have this year of 4.1, so we're down. Okay, by design. Okay, and this speaks toward the conversation we just had with regards to the supplanting of the AIS teachers so that we could do more in terms of capital projects. And lastly, we have the tax levy, which I already spoke on. That's a 1.2% increase, yielding about $610,000. All in all, the increase in funding equals the increase in expenditures. So what happens if next Tuesday we get into a situation and the budget gets voted down? The board has 2 options. Option 1, you go right to a contingent budget, which means that we would have to, if you look at the bottom box, we would have to cut $610,000. That would be a painful exercise. The other option is the board can modify the budget. They don't have to go down completely to 610. They can modify it, or they could actually put it back up. It's totally up to you. But in any event, should we have to go to a contingent budget even after a second vote, if that was to get voted down, we would then have to cut $610,000. And last but not least, the vote and the board elections are next Tuesday. Any questions? Bass?
Thanks, Harvey, for the presentation. On the previous slide, the miscellaneous.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? I didn't catch you explaining it.
Sure.
What does it include? What does it
miscellaneous is kind of like it's everything other than the three other ones. So yes, I'll give you some examples. One is interest income. Another one is we also get interest from individuals who pay their school taxes late. Another one is this is kind of an interesting one that we've had for many years. We actually have certain homes that are literally on the border between us and Newburgh, okay? Those individuals, believe it or not, have a choice. They can send their children to Newburgh, which is the other border, or they can send them to Cornwall. They send them to Cornwall. But they do get taxed by the Newburgh School District, okay? That's just how it was set up originally. That choice is completely up to the parents. They can change it every year. But because they come to this district, I get to bill Newburgh for those taxes. Okay, that goes in there as well, those kind of things. We also have, sometimes, we have foster children. If we have a foster child in this district, we are entitled to bill back their district of origin, wherever they came from, that district, a set amount as dictated by the state. So those are some of the miscellaneous items. Sure. Anything else?
Harvey, if I can just put a pin in a couple of things. You, just to put my communication hat on here, when you mentioned that state aid went up by $6 million, and you said, I wish we got that every year, you were referring to the increase. However, we will get that same aid figure next year. That becomes our funding floor. It's not as if next year we will go back to the aid we got last year.
I will tell you that that aid figure is the foundation. It's not the floor. It is totally up to the legislator and the governor to decide if that will go down.
But to be clear, Harvey, not to split hairs with you over something I think we agree on here, foundation aid has never gone down, right? It has only 2 years not gone up, but it is, I think, as good a bet in educational funding as there is in New York State.
So let me put it this way. They've never reduced foundation aid or other formula aids. What they have done is they put a new line item in. The most recent one being the gap elimination adjustment. This is going back several years where the state had a gap. They had to fill it. Well, they looked at us and every other school district, and they proportionally allocated a percentage that was simply a minus at the bottom of our aid run. So if we got exactly what we got this year, 31.9, if they decide to do another gap elimination adjustment, it would just be a deduct from that. I can't speak toward that now. It's a little premature.
But we're not, to be clear, we're not talking about a $6 million
No.
gap elimination. Okay,
No.
Thank you.
No.
Harvey?
Yes.
Based on, let's say, an average, could you give me the number that it would make it 1.2%, excuse me, let me get my words out, 1.2% based on a house, let's say $400,000 or $500,000. Is there some kind of a ballpark number you have, or if you don't tonight, you could?
I don't have that right now.
I keep.
I remember we showed it at.
I'm trying, huh?
Yeah, it's like 350. It was, the slide was for a 1%, and it was listed at $6. So I assume it's about $7 with a 1.2.
Right.
So that's for a 350 house. So scale up, scale down
Right.
from there.
Okay, because I think we should also, make sure we make that clear, too.
Tune in Thursday.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Sounds like a great piece of information to include in Thursday's presentation.
Sure.
I figured you're there already.
I will have that for
see.
Brendan.
I bet it would be.
Thank you, Harvey.
So Harvey, on getting back to the foundation aid, because Brendan brings up an interesting point, right? The history of that is the state owed the districts, all the districts, money for over a decade.
Correct.
And over the last, 3 years, I guess? Two, have been trying to fill that deficit that they created on the backs of taxpayers for a long time.
Their hand was forced per a
Finally.
lawsuit. Yes.
Finally. And so now we're done with that, and hopefully we can move forward in a more, call it aware, right? It was a wild card. That wild card's removed, and the permanence of it should be in the 90+%.
Right.
Barring any kind of fiscal issues the state may encounter
Correct.
going forward.
Correct.
But the permanence of that money is really making us whole from deficits in previous periods.
Correct.
Thank you.
Why can't we make them pay then for our lottery? If that was promised, I remember it, I saw it in writing. They all promised us that.
Right.
Why, huh? You got to lobby for that, because
Yes.
every dollar of that lottery money was supposed to go to New York State.
They
schools.
lost a lawsuit on the foundation aid, which is what forced their hand
Yeah.
to make it, 10 years worth of payments and arrears over a 2-3
I'd
year
like to
period.
start a new lawsuit. That's what I'm talking about.
Harvey,
Please do.
Harvey,
Yes.
if I remember correctly, last time I took a look at it, we do get lottery aid. But they also reduced aid in other areas. So the lottery didn't end up giving us a plus. It just,
right.
we ended up breaking even.
They give us
It-
and
because
it
take
they-
didn't
away.
generate-
He who
right.
giveth also taketh away.
Taketh away.
It
Yes.
doesn't, it doesn't generate new aid. It simply is a mechanism for the state to pay us our normal aid. That's all.
Wasn't supposed to be.
supplanting again.
Wasn't supposed to be that way. Thank you, Harvey.
Anything else? Thank
I
you.
think we're good, Harvey. Thank you. And again, just another reminder that we will be having that budget forum, which will include questions from the audience. That's this Thursday, 6 p.m. in this room. That brings us to our second recognition of visitors. So anyone who is wishing to speak can step forward to the microphone. Please identify yourself. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you'd like a response, you can leave your contact information with Linda. Nope. Okay. Well, that brings us to our meeting adjournment. A motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Jim? Motion carried. Have a good night, everybody.